بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعجل فرجهم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعجل فرجهم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعجل فرجهم.
سمجھ کے زہرا ستایا گیا، سکینہ کو قدم قدم سکینہ کیے آتی تھی صدا، پسلیاں ٹوٹ گئیں میری بھی دادی کی طرح، قید خانے سے سکینہ کیے آتی تھی صدا، پسلیاں میری بھی دادی کی طرح، مجھ کو چلتے ہوئے ناکے سے گرایا بابا، پسلیاں ٹوٹ گئیں میری بھی دادی کی طرح، ہو گئی 4 برس میں ہی سکینہ زہرا، پسلیاں ٹوٹ گئیں میری بھی دادی کی طرح، قید خانے سے سکینہ کیے آتی تھی صدا، پسلیاں ٹوٹ گئیں میری بھی دادی کی طرح، وہ بھی دادا سے چھپاتی رہی اپنا پہلو، مجھ سے بھی دیکھ نہ جائیں گے علی کے آنسو، مجھ سے بھی دیکھ نہ جائیں گے علی کے آنسو، جیتے جی میرا زخم نہ دیکھے بھیا، پسلیاں ٹوٹ گئیں میری بھی دادی کی طرح، قید خانے سے سکینہ کیے آتی تھی صدا، پسلیاں ٹوٹ گئیں میری بھی دادی کی طرح، مجھ کو مارے گئے اس زخم پہ پتھر بابا، مجھ کو مارے گئے اس زخم پہ پتھر بابا، رو کے میں کہتی رہی پھر بھی کسی نے نہ سنا، پسلیاں ٹوٹ گئیں میری بھی دادی کی طرح، قید خانے سے سکینہ کیے آتی تھی صدا، پسلیاں ٹوٹ گئیں میری بھی دادی کی طرح، اب سمجھ سکتی ہوں کس طرح وہ سوتی ہوں گی، ہاتھ پہلو پہ رکھے کیس تڑپتی ہوں گی، ہاتھ پہلو پہ رکھے کیس تڑپتی ہوں گی، کروٹے درد مجھے بھی نہیں لینے دیتا، پسلیاں ٹوٹ گئیں میری بھی دادی کی طرح، قید خانے سے سکینہ کیے آتی تھی صدا، پسلیاں ٹوٹ گئیں میری بھی دادی کی طرح، ہُبہُ فاطمہ زہرا سی ضعیفی چائی، جھریاں چہرے پہ بالوں میں سفیدی آئی، جھریاں چہرے پہ بالوں میں سفیدی آئی، ایک کمی باقی تھی وہ بھی ہوئی پوری بابا، پسلیاں ٹوٹ گئیں میری بھی دادی کی طرح، قید خانے سے سکینہ کیے آتی تھی صدا، پسلیاں ٹوٹ گئیں میری بھی دادی کی طرح، ساتھ سورج کے یہ دل ڈوب رہا ہوتا ہے، اماں کہتی ہے یہی وقت دعا ہوتا ہے، اماں کہتی ہے یہی وقت دعا ہوتا ہے، روز کرتی ہوں سر شام میں مرنے کی دعا، پسلیاں ٹوٹ گئیں میری بھی دادی کی طرح، قید خانے سے سکینہ کیے آتی تھی صدا، پسلیاں ٹوٹ گئیں میری بھی دادی کی طرح، مجھ کو چلتے ہوئے نہ کیسے گرایا بابا، پسلیاں ٹوٹ گئیں میری بھی دادی کی طرح، قید خانے سے سکینہ کیے آتی تھی صدا، پسلیاں ٹوٹ گئیں میری بھی دادی کی طرح، بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات، اللہم صل علی محمد و آل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين الحمد لله الذي جعل الحمد مفتاحا لذكره وسببا للمزيد من فضله ودليلا على آلائه وعظمته ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أرواحنا له فدا أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ما أصاب من مصيبة في الأرض ولا في أنفسكم إلا في كتاب من قبل أن نبرأها إن ذلك على الله يسير لكي لا تأسوا على ما فاتكم ولا تفرحوا بما أتاكم والله لا يحب كل مختال فخور صدق الله علي العظيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته جميع المؤمنين والمؤمنات of the Baytul Ilm community. It is good to be among you, at least virtually, as we continue to commemorate the aftermath of Karbala, the aftermath of the Shahada of Imam Hussein, his companions, Ahlul Bayt, alayhim afsalatu salam, which was the imprisonment of Imam Zain al-Abidin and the women and children of Ahlul Bayt and their companions. When we look at the events that happened after the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, alayhi salatu salam, we must ask this question, that if the reform of Imam Hussein, was it complete, was it finished, or was there still a need to bring about reform in the Ummah? Imam Hussein said he left from Medina, as he's speaking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not in order to seek any worldly gain, but simply, as he states, لِنُظْهِرَ الْإِصْلَاحَ فِي بِلَادِكَ, in order to bring about reform and change for the better in the Ummah, in the lands in which the Muslimin, they lived at the time. When we examine this reform, perhaps the best way to think about the reform, or any reform as well, as Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he alludes to and he addresses that reform or salah or islah comes in the form of one's deen, one's faith, one's connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the other with regards to one's dunya. The Imam, he beautifully stated that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or rather mankind, أُعْتِيَ جَمِيعَ عِلْمِ مَا فِيهِ صَلَاحُ دِينِهِ وَدُنْيَاهُ, that mankind has been given access to that knowledge or understanding which brings about reform or brings about correction in his or her life, his faith and relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and his or her life with regards to this world. And this is something that we understand, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He provides this knowledge to mankind through His prophets and through the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, we understand this from the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says He sent the prophets in order to read the signs and to يُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ, to teach them the book and teach them the wisdom. The book which has the commands and knowledge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and wisdom, al-hikmah, how to apply that knowledge that they are teaching mankind. So we understand that the role of not only the Prophet, But the Imams, the Ahlul Bayt alayhim is to teach us. And in that knowledge that we gain from them is knowledge which is beneficial, is knowledge which will help us to correct and do islah of our deen and our dunya. In fact, Imam Musa Kadhim alayhi as he was speaking to some of his companions, and he was identifying Imam Rida alayhi as the Imam after him. He was making this very clear in the appointment of the Imamate. So Imam Musa Kadhim, he outlines the qualities of the Imam, the responsibility also of the Imam. So he states that وَقَدْ عُلِّمَ الْحُكْمَ وَالْفَهْمَ وَالسَّخَاء وَالْمَعْرِفَةَ بِمَا يَحْتَاجُ إِلَيْهِ النَّاسِ وَمَا اخْتَلَفُوا فِيهِ مِنْ أَمْرِ دِينِهِمْ وَدُنْيَاهُمْ. So he says that the Imam, or someone who is holding this position, is one who has been taught wisdom, or taught the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that Imam understands the Quran, understands the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, understands the prohibitions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, understands them also from the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He also has understanding, comprehension. The Imam is someone who has knowledge of everything that mankind needs. مَا يَحْتَاجُ إِلَيْهِ النَّاسِ. And of course, that which mankind needs are things with regards to his worldly life and also things with regards to his spiritual life. Likewise, the Imam, as Imam Musa Kadhim alayhi points out, is one who has knowledge about that which mankind disagrees in. مَخْتَلَفُوا فِيهِ مِنْ أَمْرِ دِينِهِمْ وَدُنْيَاهُمْ. And of course, it is natural that mankind, they will differ about certain things with regards to their aqidah, their understanding of religion, and likewise their understanding of their actions in this world and how they should go about living in this world, what is permissible for them to do or to not do. And all of this knowledge is with the Imam. And so therefore he is one who holds the reins of the deen, as Imam Rida himself, he states, he says, إِنَّ الْإِمَامَةَ زِمَامُ الدِّينِ وَنِظَامُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ وَصَلَاحُ الدُّنْيَا. So the Imam is one, or one who has the Imamat, is the one who holds the reins to the deen. Because the deen, or our faith, our religion, is something that permeates every aspect of our life. Not simply in our personal life as we connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through our ibadah, through our salat, through our fasting, through our hajj, but it is something that connects even in our work, even how we interact with one another. So the Imam holds the reins to the deen and is one who, again, sets that structure and the best of structures for the Muslims, those who submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَصَلَاحُ الدُّنْيَا. And the one who reforms and corrects the wrongs that exist in the world. And this is something that is needed at each and every time. It is not something that is that Imam Hussein alayhi he started, and there's no need for that for as long as this world exists, for as long as humanity are interacting with one another. We need to understand the best way of living, the best way of interacting with one another. We need to be able to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on a personal level to bring about our self-reform and self-refinement, but then also what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requires from us in our interaction with one another. And unfortunately, as the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he points out with regards to the state of things towards the end of time. He said that it will be a state such that people will leave religion, يُذَعُ الدِّينِ وَتَرْفَعُ الدُّنْيَا, and they will hold up the dunya. They would hold importance to the dunya, but with regards to their faith, their religion, they will not give it much importance. And many may think that by not giving religion importance, by not giving faith importance, then our deen, our dunya, our worldly life will be great. But that is not the case. because the ethics and how one should interact with each other, the manner in which one should do business and trade, what is permissible, what is not permissible, all of these are encompassed within our deen. It is something that exists, as I said, in every aspect of our life. And this is why Imam Hussein alayhi hafizahullah, he stood up against Yazid, because Yazid was going to remove all of these things, that he had no importance for the deen, as we know. And this is something that is well documented in the history of Tabari, the history of the Khulafa that Suyuti wrote, that he openly disregarded religion. And so therefore Imam Hussein had to stand up before he became the model for people. As we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself, he states within the Quran about the two different types of leadership. That one type of leadership, أَئِمَّةٌ يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا, that they are imams, they are leaders who guides based on the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then there's those who يَدْعُونَ إِلَى النَّارِ, that they are a'imma, or they are imams, they are people who hold the reins of leadership, but their guidance is not by the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Their example is not the example of those who are godly men or leaders, but rather they call, or they take people in a direction towards the hellfire, towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's displeasure. And so we see that Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi hafizahullah, in the aftermath of Karbala, that he was continuing this mission. Yes, that mission from Imam Sajjad alayhi hafizahullah in its form was different from that of Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein stood up, he fought, and although Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi hafizahullah did not lead a war or an uprising after Imam Hussein alayhi hafizahullah, his mission was still the same, to bring about this islah fi fil ummah, in the ummah, to bring about this islah fi biladillah, in the lands where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ruled over, or at least ruled over in consciousness, where the people said La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is why we see, when we examine the life of Imam Zayn al-Abidin, and in these lectures I want to focus a bit on the sermon that Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi hafizahullah he made in Damascus, because it's a very important aspect of how the Imam was working to bring about this reform. It's stated that when Imam Zayn al-Abidin and the women, the household of Imam Hussein alayhi hafizahullah, when they had entered into Damascus, and they were in the masjid of Damascus, there were several things that happened. One of those events is that Yazid had requested someone to ascend to the minbar and to begin to give a speech and give a lecture. So this person, he began with praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and singing salutations on the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Thereafter, he began to praise the victory of Yazid, the supposed victory of Yazid over Imam Hussein and his companions, and the arrest and the detainment of the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the way he shaped it was that, well, the transgressors were Imam Hussein and his family. So at that point, Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi hafizahullah, he objected. He says that he told this person that he not have any shame or any deen to make such a statement, to make such a false claim, especially on the minbar of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This minbar, again, symbolically, not the actual minbar that Rasulullah stood on, but symbolically, that the Muslims, they understand that this is the place and the station from someone, that someone stands and someone delivers the message of the Quran. Someone delivers the message that was learned from the sirat, from the lifestyle and the traditions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So once he made the statement, the speaker, he stopped. And according to different accounts of what actually happened at that point, some say that Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi hafizatu salam, he went onto the minbar, just simply went onto the minbar. This individual came down. In other accounts, it says that he looked towards Yazid. He says, allow me to go upon this minbar and to give a talk or a speak or advice about something that the people will benefit from, that their deen will benefit from. They will have some value in what is stated, rather than listening to this person who was speaking previously. According to some of the accounts, they say that Yazid, he hesitated, and at one point he even denied. But the people who were there in the masjid, the audience, they realized that, well, this is the grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They call him Ibn Rasulullah. They said that he is from the Ahlul Bayt. Then allow him to speak, that perhaps we may learn something. So Imam Zain al-Abidin, he ascended the minbar, and just to point out this kind of fact, or at least the scenario that was going on, which is very interesting, because this is the minbar in Damascus. The minbar, or the platform to speak in Damascus on a public forum, which I don't believe any of our Imams ﷺ had the opportunity to do. Because Damascus was in the stronghold of Muawiyah, and from the minbar of Damascus, this is where Muawiyah, he began the cursing of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib ﷺ from the minbar until he was stopped. And thereafter, as we see, the minbar, or this public forum, was in the hand of Yazid. So none of the Imams were given this opportunity to speak from this platform on the public street in Damascus. But this was something that Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi hafizatu salam, he was able to do, and he took this opportunity to educate people, as was the mission of the Ahlul Bayt, as the mission of anyone who is an Imam, who is a leader of the community or of the Ummah. So as Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi hafizatu salam, he ascended the minbar, he began also with a praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and salutations upon Muhammad wa ali Muhammad alayhi hafizatu salam. And of course that famous aspect where the Imam, he was speaking about his lineage, where he says, Ana ibn Medina to Mecca. I am the son of Medina and Mecca. Ana ibn Zamzam. I am the son of Zamzam. Ana ibn Muhammad al-Mustafa. I am the son of Muhammad al-Mustafa. Ana ibn Ali al-Murtada. I am the son of Ali al-Murtada. Ana ibn Fatima al-Zahra. I am the son of Fatima al-Zahra. Alayhim salam. And then he says that Ana ibn, or Ana ahadu Sayyidai Shabab Ahl al-Jannah. I am one of the youth, masters of the youth of paradise. Things which the audience, they could identify with. And as Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi hafizatu salam, he was making these statements, giving his lineage, making it very clear for people who he was, and also outlining the fadilat of Ahlul Bayt, the position of Ahlul Bayt alayhi hafizatu salam. That position of Ahlul Bayt, which, again, no one would doubt after that moment, that why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he stated in the Quran that there's no ajr, that there's no compensation for this final revelation, illa mawaddata fil qurba. So Imam Zain al-Abidin, he was placing this forth before the people. It said that at that moment, as Imam Zain al-Abidin, he was in the middle of his speech, Yazid called for the mu'adhan to come forth and to call the Adhan. And this was to stop the speech of Imam Zain al-Abidin. But if we look at the wisdom and the hikmah of Imam Zain al-Abidin, and how the Imam continued to educate the audience, educate everyone there, that we understand the beauty of the Ahlul Bayt. We understand the reform mission of Imam Zain al-Abidin and how his mission of reforming the Ummah was connected directly to the mission of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam. It said, as the Mu'adhin, and I want to focus on this particularly in that encounter of Imam Zain al-Abidin in the court of Yazid. So as the Mu'adhin, he said, Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wahdahu la sharika lah. He said, Imam Zain al-Abidin, after Allahu Akbar, after the Mu'adhin said that, Imam Zain al-Abidin said, كبرت كبيرا لا يقاس ولا يدرك بالحواس ولا شيء أكبر من الله. He says that, yes, you're saying Allah is great, but what everyone should realize is that this Mu'adhin, and he's talking directly to him, yes, كبرت كبيرا, that yes, you've exalted the Most High, that cannot be compared to anything. وَلَا يُدْرَكُ بِالْحَوَاسِ, nor can he be understood through the senses. And there's nothing greater than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then when he recited the Shahada, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, when he recited this part, Imam Zain al-Abidin, he says, Shahida biha sha'ari wa bashari wa lahmi wa dami wa mukhi wa azmi. He says that my hair, my skin, the meat of my bones, my blood, my intellect, my brain, and my bones, they all bear witness La ilaha illallah. So Imam Zain al-Abidin, and these very brief comments about just this section of the Adhan. And in some sense, we can understand it as a tafsir, as a commentary on the Adhan. Imam Zain al-Abidin, he puts forth a great deal of knowledge for us to understand. And if we understand that, in that is Islahu dinina wa dunyana, that there's a correction, there's a reform. If we truly understand what the Imam is stating, it will bring about a change within us in our belief, in our aqeedah, in our understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also with regards to our worldly life as well. So first we must understand that what is this qiyas that the Imam is talking about? He told the Mu'adhin, he says that, yes, kabbarta kabiran la yuqas. You have exalted a being that cannot be compared to anyone else. So this qiyas is a type of comparing. It's a way of thinking. So, and quite often, many people, they fall into this type of thinking. They say, oh, well, we think of generosity, and sometimes we think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's generosity in terms of our own generosity, what we see. Even if we take that generosity and we say that, oh, well, yeah, Allah is 100 times greater than that. Even this in itself is a type of qiyas. So you cannot put a number, or you cannot put a value on the degree to which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is more generous than mankind, than ourselves, or more generous than some other example that we see. Cannot be compared with anything. And Imam Rada alayhi salatu, he makes this point as well. He says, لا يترك بالحواس ولا يقاس بالناس معروف بغير تشبيه. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he cannot be perceived with our senses, our five senses. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot be compared to anything. He is known, معروف بغير تشبيه. In other words, we should know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a manner which we compare nothing to him, because there's nothing comparable to him. وَمُتَدَانٍ فِي بُعْدِهِ لَا بِنَذِيرٍ وَلَا يُمَثَّلُ بِخِلِيقَتِهِ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is worshipped, though he is close, but he seems far. There's nothing that is like him at all, and in no shape, form, or fashion can he be compared to his creation. One of the beautiful but very complex statements as well by Imam Jafar as-Sadiq alayhi regarding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and regarding his qualities. And two of the qualities which are repeated often in the Quran, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is Sami'un Basir, that he is hearing and that he is all seeing, all hearing, all seeing. And Imam Sadiq, he explains this to one of his companions, that what does it mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's all seeing, he's all hearing? And particularly when we think of these, we think of ourselves. We see things around us, we hear things around us. So Imam Sadiq, in order to make this distinction, in order to show that, listen, you cannot compare at all Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with his creation. He tells this companion, he says, listen, when you see with your eyes, this flesh. He says, when you hear with your ears. And so he says, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he sees from whence he hears, and he hears from whence he sees. So he tells this companion that, well, you can't see from your ears, nor can you hear from your eyes. He says, but there's no differentiation between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with regards to his hearing and seeing. There's no particular point. He says that same manner in which Allah sees is the same manner in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hears, from the same perspective, meaning that he does not use these different, you could say, parts or body parts or these tools in order to hear and see. It is all from the same perspective. So this is one of the beautiful but complex. So if you think about it, then you understand that, yes, this cannot be compared to mankind. Because if we were blind, we wouldn't be able to see. If we were deaf, we would not be able to hear. But why? Because we need these tools. If something happened to our ears, we can't hear. Something happened to our eyes, we wouldn't be able to see. But this is not the case with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why, as Imam Sadiq, he explained to his companion, he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with regards to having any partner, with regards to having anything that is like him or that he can be measured in any form or fashion, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he refutes this in the Quran, is in Surah Zumar, that's chapter 39 of the Quran, verse 67. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, وَمَا قَدْرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِ. He says, most people do not give the correct regards to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. مَا قَدْرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ. And qadr comes from the point of measure, meaning that no one can measure Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whatever they perceive of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they do not perceive him in his entire. وَمَا قَدْرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ وَالْأَرْضُ جَمِيعًا قَبْضَتُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. He says, and you will see that the entire earth will be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his grasp on Yawm al-Qiyamah, when in fact it is already in his grasp, but a lot of people do not perceive as well. So the earth and the samawat, matwiya, biyaminihi, all of these would be in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's possession on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And in fact, at this moment. And a part of not giving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala his due measure, for lack of a better way of saying it, وَمَا قَدْرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِ, not giving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala his due measure, is by individuals assuming, as many people in positions of power, that by assuming that they have authority over this world, by assuming that, again, life and death is solely in their hands, by assuming that their power is greater than what it is. And this is something that Yazid did, and he made it very clear when Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi, when he was giving this khutbah, or at one point Imam Zain al-Abidin was asked by Yazid, he says, how do you see what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did to your father? كيف ترى ما صنع الله بكم? That how do you see what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did with you? And in response to that, again, because he was saying that masibah of Ahlul Bayt, he says, this is from your own hands. But Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salatu immediately he refuted this. He says, ما أصاب من مصيبة في الأرض ولا في أنفسكم إلا في كتاب من قبل أن نبرأها إن ذلك على الله يسير. He says that, look, whatever musibah, whatever test comes to us in the land, in the earth, or with regard to our own selves. He says, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states this, Allah says this in Surah Al-Hadid, verse 22. So he says that whatever trial or test falls upon a land, falls upon a nation, or falls upon a person, then this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written in the book, the Lawh Mahfuz. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written it, and it comes about when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings it about. Of course, this in itself, at some point, is making that indication to the Shahada of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu, something that was foretold by Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It was not something that just came about, but it was foretold by Rasulullah. So that musibah, that trust, and that trial that has come, it is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written, has decreed. And then there's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He states that believer, that mu'min who understands this, لِكَيْ لَا تَأْسَوْا عَلَى مَا فَاتَكُمْ وَلَا تَفْرَحُوا بِمَا آتَاكُمُ اللَّهُ وَاللَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ كُلَّ مُخْتَالٍ فَخُورٍ. He says, that person who understands this will not despair from what has gone beyond them. In other words, that which they have lost. They will not fear, they will not have any despair with regards to that, nor will they brag and be arrogant about that which they have gained. And we see that is the disposition of Imam Zain al-Abidin and the Ahlul Bayt. Whereas Yazid, he was bragging and he sent someone to the minbar to brag about, oh, we have victory. But Imam Zain al-Abidin says, well, we've lost nothing. That we are grieving over in a way that takes us into depression, that we are saddened about. Again, yes, Imam Hussein and his companions, the Ahlul Bayt, they were Shahada in Karbala. They achieve the highest status of being at that time, and if any time. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself, when it comes to this station of Shahada, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's the first one who gives Shahada. And what that Shahada is of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's being. Shahid Allahu annahu la ilaha illahu wal malaikatu wa ulul ilm qa'iman bil qist. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He bears witness that He is only one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is one God. And so there's His angels and those who possess knowledge. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bears witness to His justice. So those individuals who understand this, when they give that shahada, as Imam Zain al-Abidin, he alludes to when he gives that commentary about the shahada, when the mu'adhan, he says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Imam Zain al-Abidin, he says, my skin, my hair, the meat on my bones itself, my intellect, my brain, everything, every aspect of my body bears witness, La ilaha illallah. So a person who also becomes shaheed, as Imam Hussein alayhi salatu, he was shaheed, as his companions were shaheed, they rose to the highest station of being. The first to give that shahada is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He states about the ummah. He says, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made you. This is in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 143, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this ummah ummatan wasata, a middle ummah, a balanced ummah, a balanced people or a balanced nation. And you need that balance to have the best of Iman and the best of this world. Khairul dunya wa khairul akhirah. And that can only come about with balance. But He's made you this ummatan wasata so that you may be a witness over mankind. And the Prophet of Allah will be witness over you. What are we to bear witness over mankind about? This ummatan wasata. And of course, many of the mufassirin, the commentators, they say that the Ummatul Wasa is the Ahlul Bayt, the Imam alayhim afsad, which of course is without doubt, they are perhaps the first and primordial reference of that Ummatul Wasa. But it also encompasses everyone who says, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. That we are to bear witness that this is the best way of life. That the Quran is the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And by following that Quran, the commands and prohibitions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we have been given the best way of life. So this is our witness and our testimony over mankind. And the Prophet, he makes testimony over us towards the same thing. And he bears witness over us as well, that he's delivered this message and that we are supposed to follow that message. So this is why Imam Zayn al-Abidin, he says that what we have lost in Karbala was not a loss. It's not something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done against us or something bad, but rather He elevated the status of Ahlul Bayt. Rather, He elevated the status of the mu'mineen, because the status of the Shahada is a great status. So if we want to summarize the mission of Imam Zayn al-Abidin, and particularly how he implemented that mission throughout this journey after the martyrdom of Imam Hussein and the Shahada in Karbala, he implemented that mission by going against the false statements and announcements of Yazid, that media at that time where they were putting out false information about what was the reality of that battle. As the person who ascended the minbar began to praise Yazid in his victory and to put down the Ahlul Bayt as if they had no significance, and Imam Zayn al-Abidin, he says, no, wait a minute, this is not the case. That is even against the Quran. لا أسألكم عليه أجرا إلا مودة في القربى. That the love of the Ahlul Bayt, the love of the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that this is the ajr, this is the compensation for this final revelation and following the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that mission was to speak up and speak out against the false statements that were being made. This is something that even ourselves today, that if we see falsehood being spread, that's our mission, that if we are going to live like Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, if we are to take the inspiration from Imam Hussein, take the inspiration from Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi afsad wasalam, that we must speak out against the falsehoods that are being spread, to correct and do islah of those false statements, those false accusations that are being made. And this is something that we see some of the mu'mineen were also inspired by this. They understood this. And I just want to take you back to one moment before the caravan reached to Damascus, before Imam Zayn al-Abidin, Zainab al-Kubra, the women, the children, the heads of the Shuhada, before they reached to Damascus, that place where Imam Zayn al-Abidin when he was asked about the toughest part of this journey, he would often say 3 times, Asham, Asham, Asham. I want to take you to one moment before that, where one of the followers of Ahlul Bayt, he understood what that mission was. That after the Shahada were martyred, that he must speak out against the falsehood. He must not allow the false story of Karbala to prevail against the true story of what happened in Karbala. And this is when the heads of the Shahada in the Ahlul Bayt, they were being ushered into Kufa. One of the Shias, the companions of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi salatu wasalam, by the name of Abdullah ibn Afif. He was a person who had fought on the side of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi salatu wasalam, and he lost sight in his left eye in the Battle of Jamal. In the Battle of Siffin, he lost the sight in his right eye. And because of this, someone who is in that condition, it was not obligatory for him to go to battle. He would not be able to be on the battlefield to see the enemies from where they are attacking. But he was a strong and very firm Shia of Ahlul Bayt, alayhi salatu wasalam. And he said that in this elderly age of his and this moment of him not having sight, he would often cling to the Masjid of Kufa. That's where he would go and he would pray each and every night. He would engage in his ibadah. And after the martyrdom of the Shahada of Karbala, they say Ibn Ziyad, he went into the Masjid of Kufa and he went onto the Mimbar, began to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and gave salutations upon the Prophet, and he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala أظهر الحق وأهله وأذل الباطل وأهله. It says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought forth and given victory to the people, to truth and the people of truth, meaning himself and Yazid and those who fought against Imam Hussein, and has belittled falsehood and the people of falsehood, referring to Imam Hussein and his Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu. He says that Allah has destroyed the people who were Kadhab ibn al-Kadhab. This is what he mentioned about the Ahlul Bayt. And when Abdullah ibn Afif, he heard this, and again, Abdullah ibn Afif was known in Kufa, that he stood with Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, fighting on the side of Imam Ali, losing sight in both eyes in 2 different battles with the Imam Ali, defending truth. So he stood up in the Masjid al-Kufa and he says, Yabn Ziyad, Ant al-Kadhab. Yabn Ziyad, Inna al-Kadhab, Ibn al-Kadhab. Ant al-Kadhab. He says, oh, Ibn Ziyad, that you're the liar. You're the son of a liar. Wa abuk, and your father. فَمَنْ اسْتَعْمَلَكَ وَأَبُوهُ, and the person who has used you to do this awful deed, and his father, that they are liars. That these individuals, all of you, have pronounced falsehood. All of you have engaged in falsehood. That you call yourself Muslim and you ascend he says, Member al-Muslimin, you ascend the member that is for the believers. And you make such statements. You claim that you are from the Muslims, but you kill Abna al-Rasul, you kill the children, you kill the family of Rasulullah. I said, Ibn Ziyad, he became very furious at this. And he looked in to find out who is saying this. And boldly, Abdullah ibn Afif, he says, Ana qa'il. I'm the one who said this. I'm the one who's opposing you. I'm the one who's not allowing you to spread this false message. He said that at that point, Ibn Ziyad had ordered him to be captured. The folks who were around, and these were members from the Azadi tribe who were around Abdullah ibn Afif, they surrounded him and quickly moved him out of the Masjid al-Kufa. So there would not be bloodshed inside the masjid. This is the extent of Yazid and Ibn Ziyad, the people who work for Yazid. This is the extent that they would not even have cared to spill blood in the masjid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they quickly moved Abdullah ibn Afif out of the masjid and they took him to his house. They quickly rushed him to his house and they stood guard around the house of Abdullah ibn Afif. But not long after that, the clinging of swords indicated that there was a battle that was going on outside the house of Abdullah ibn Afif. Abdullah ibn Afif, he was staying with his daughter. And at one point he told his daughter that, give me my sword. So Abdullah ibn Afif, he took his sword and he just waited. And when the fighting outside the home ended and the door of Abdullah ibn Afif was broken down, that these men, the army of Yazid, were coming for this man who was blind. They said that as they began the battle and began to fight with him, the daughter, she stood over into the corner telling her father, Ya abata ya ja'u min yaminin wa yasarin. She says, oh my father, they're coming, they're attacking from the right and they're attacking from the left. So Abdullah ibn Afif, he was swinging his sword to the right and he was swinging his sword to the left. He was swinging his sword in front of him, and at times he would have to turn behind and swing the sword to fight off these enemies. They said that these folks, when they were coming at Abdullah ibn Afif, though he was a blind man and he's being guided by his daughter that which way the enemy is coming, that they had a difficult time with him, that most of the people who came towards him, that they were being struck down by the sword of Abdullah ibn Afif. And he would tell them, he would say, أُقْسِمُ لَوْ يَفْسَحُ عَنْ بَصَرِي أَذَاقَ عَلَيْكُمْ مَوْرِدِي وَمَصْدَرِي. He says, I swear by Allah that if I had sight at this moment, that you all would be in trouble, that I would strike all of you down. But how much could this one man fight? How much could this blind man fight? And how fast could his daughter tell her father from which angle and from which direction the enemies were coming? They said at one moment, the enemies, they surrounded him from every single side and they began to attack all at the same time Abdullah ibn Afif until he was struck and injured. They grabbed Abdullah ibn Afif, they arrested him, tied him up and took him to Ibn Ziyad. And when he was before Ibn Ziyad, he said the same thing that he said in his house. He says, Wallah, law farraja li an basari, adaqa alayka mawridi wa masdari. He told Ibn Ziyad, he says, I swear that if he gave me sight at this moment, then I will end you. I will not allow you to have one other breath on this earth. But Ibn Ziyad, he says, well, this is the moment that I will end you. This is the moment when I will kill you. And then Abdullah ibn Afif, he began to say, Alhamdulillahi alladhi, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, alladhi razaqani ash-shahada. He says, I praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is rewarding me with shahada. He says, I've been praying for this shahada since before your birth, Ibn Ziyad. I've been praying for this shahada, and now he has achieved shahada. But if Abdullah ibn Afif, I believe that even if he had one eye, he would probably still be he would go to Karbala. He would have sacrificed himself like the Shahada of Karbala, like Hur, like Muslim ibn Awsaja and Habib ibn Madahir. And though even if he had that one eye, he probably would not have been able to fight or been obligated to fight in Karbala. And with that one eye, if he had seen the Shahada and how their heads were being ushered into Kufa, that alone would have made him fight. That as he fought, even in the state of him being blind. They said that Ibn Ziyad, he then ordered for one man to cut the head of Abdullah ibn Afif and to take his body and to hang his body in the market. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون اللهم بحق هذا المجلس الحسيني اغفر ذنوبنا واستر عيوبنا وقضي حوائجنا واشفي مرضانا وعجل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان واجعلنا من أوانه وأنصاره والمستشهدين بين يديه وتحت لوائه بحق محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على ماتم الحسين
رو رہی ہے سوچ کر رو رہی ہے سوچ کر عمر بنی یہ آج بھی اصغر بے شیر جیسی قبر ہے عباس کی اصغر بے شیر جیسی قبر ہے عباس کی رو رہی ہے سوچ کر رو رہی ہے سوچ کر مل بنی یہ آج بھی اصغر بے شیر جیسی قبر ہے عباس کی اصغر بے شیر جیسی قبر ہے عباس کی رشک کرتی تھی میں سے حیدر کرار پر پاؤں خط دیتے تھے اس کے بیٹھ کر راوار پر ہائے میرے شیر کی ہائے میرے شیر کی کیسی حالت ہو گئی اصغر بے شیر جیسی قبر ہے عباس کی اصغر بے شیر جیسی قبر ہے عباس کی مر کے بھی اس نے نبھایا اس نے جو وعدہ کیا اپنے بیٹے کی وفا پر فخر ہے مجھ کو بڑا اب نہیں اصغر کی ماں سے کچھ مجھے شرمندگی اصغر بے شیر جیسی قبر ہے عباس کی اصغر بے شیر جیسی قبر ہے عباس کی باپ کے بدلے مسلمانوں نے بیٹے سے کیے سر جدا ہے تن جدا بازو جدا ہے شیر کے آپ کی تصویر ٹکڑے ہو گئی ہے یاری اصغر بے شیر جیسی قبر ہے عباس کی اصغر بے شیر جیسی قبر ہے عباس کی کون لڑ سکتا تھا اس سے کس میں تھا اتنا جگر سنتی ہوں لاکھ نے مارا ہے اس کو گھیر کر لاش بھی اس کی سلامت دشت میں رہنے نہ دی اصغر بے شیر جیسی قبر ہے عباس کی اصغر بے شیر جیسی قبر ہے عباس کی کیا قد و قامت تھی اس کی یہ اسے معلوم تھا ایک گٹھڑی میں سمٹ کر کیسے قاسم آ گیا فروا جانتی ہیں فروا جانتی مسیح اصغر بشیر جیسی قبر ہے عباس کی اصغر بشیر جیسی قبر ہے عباس کی کب سماتا تھا میری چادر میں تو اے میرے لال کر دیا ہے ظالموں نے یہ تیرے لاشیں کا حال ہے میرے سر کی رضا بھی تیری تربت سے بڑی اصغر بشیر جیسی قبر ہے عباس کی اصغر بشیر جیسی قبر ہے عباس کی کہہ کے یا عباس کرتا ہے وہ اشکوں سے وضو ڈرتی ہوں جاری نہ ہو پھر اس کی آنکھوں سے لہو سامنے عابد کے یوں سامنے عابد کے یوں کہتی نہیں میں ہوں کبھی اصغر بشیر جیسی قبر ہے عباس کی اصغر بشیر جیسی قبر ہے عباس کی رو کے کرتی ہے سلام ان کو تکرم کربلا فاطمہ زہرا سے ماں بیٹے نے کی ایسی وفا مادر عباس کی تربت بھی ہے ٹوٹی ہوئی اصغر بشیر جیسی قبر ہے عباس کی اصغر بشیر جیسی قبر ہے عباس کی
Alaikum wa rahmatullah. Dear brothers and sisters, tonight's majlis was sponsored by the family of our Akbaris, brother Mujtaba Akbari and sister Sabika Akbari, for their sehat salamti and salamti and khair o barakat for their entire family and for their children, their siblings, their family. Please recite a loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Akbaris have requested us for a Surah Fatiha for their father, Marhum Sayyid Shaheed Akbari, and Marhumeen of all Marhumeen of Akbari family. So kindly recite a Surah Mubarakah Fatiha masbukatan bis salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Siratal اللهم اغفر لهم واحشرهم مع